Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to give a couple minutes for people to filter in, and then we will get started. Okay, I think we've got a good enough number to go. All right. Welcome, everybody, to today's webinar with Gil Silberman. We will be going through Gil's 25 things every founder should know, and then opening up the floor for an AMA. Today's webinar is sponsored by the company that we run, Gust. We're the world's largest online ecosystem of startups, accelerators, and investors. A couple quick notes about what we do. The first is that we provide tools to help you organize a new Delaware corporation, manage your cap table, issue shares, and all that fun stuff that you don't really want to become an expert about. We help you do it the right way. We also run Gust Mission Control, which is basically an online acceleration platform for startups covering all the nuts and bolts. So you can come ask us questions and get a better understanding of fundraising instruments and structures, how to allocate equity, practice your pitch, all of that fun stuff, regardless of what software you use. And most recently, we've also launched a new angel investing program to help first-time angel investors get started writing small checks, learn the diligence process, and become an active angel investor. So if you're interested in any of that, come find us at Gust, and we'll be posting links to this stuff in the chat as we go along. And then back to today's session, super excited to have Gil Silberman with us. He's a longtime Gust collaborator, leading contender for most interesting man in the world, and he'll be running us through. So take it away, Gil.
Okay, I will start my screen share in a moment here. Okay, there we go. I seem to be sharing. So welcome to 25 Things Every Founder Should Know. Before getting started, although I assume many of you have started your companies already and it's too late. We may be too late, but if you have, hopefully will recognize some of these things. And I'd love to hear your understanding and your experiences as well, and whether they comport with mine. A little more about me. I am Gil Silberman again. I am managing partner of Luca Ventures. I have been starting companies for the last 40 years and in Silicon Valley for about 30. As a startup lawyer since the beginning of the first dot-com explosion and bubble. And I've been through two more dot-com or tech bubbles in Silicon Valley, and hopefully I'll be around for a fourth. Throughout and during the period, I have started and been at the ground level as a lawyer and founder of hundreds of companies that went through hundreds of funding rounds. 5 of these became unicorns with probably $40 billion or so of market value. And I have taken a personal ownership stake in maybe 150 or so seed and early stage just started startups. Through Gust and through Gust Launch, we've launched thousands of companies. So I have seen a lot. And through that time, I've gathered some observations about what it personally means to go through the founder experience and what works, what doesn't. So I will go through 25 of them. Some of them are paired and they seem to be next to each other and say the opposite of each other. I happen to think that it's best to examine something and then its polar opposite and assume they are both true. And they become kind of like, let's see if I can do this, like a diffraction grating or a Moiré pattern. And what the truth is, the light that shines between and the difference you see. So that's kind of my approach to words of wisdom that may not be fully true, but in combination with others may be. So you get the whole picture. Without any further ado, let's get started. Number 1, do it like you mean it. Most people do not have the guts, nor do most people have the financial freedom to work without pay to start a company. Given the likelihood of failure, the absence of guardrails, a terrible, unfortunately, time and risk-adjusted rate of return for most founders on their first company or any company. If you can do that, you're a frickin' unicorn. You are a rare person. Take that chance and go all in. Don't just sit by the sidelines. Next, Oops, I've gone one ahead. So the middle one, ideas are not enough. You're building a full-blown enterprise, creating something out of nothing. And that business is going to be making something people want. They want to buy, they can buy, you can reproduce and distribute and sell it at a profit. Wishing that so doesn't make it happen. It is a company, a business, not a dream. Next, similarly, it's a full-time job. Part-time founders do not succeed in general. Businesses are not hobbies. Next one, failure is guaranteed. Hate to say it. There is a truism that 90% of all startups will fail. I think that overstates it because that counts a bunch of people who don't actually start. By the time you actually incorporate your company, quit your day job, get your co-founders together and get serious, if you're good, the ratio is less than 50%. But the bad news is 100% fail. You will fail because every startup that eventually succeeds has suffered multiple near-death experiences. Running out of money is the big one. But there can also be a massive lawsuit, losing a key customer, a PR disaster, employees pick up and quit, your co-founders break up. These experiences are universal, and one or more will happen to almost every company. So the key is surviving. Okay. Next, unfortunately, starting a company and the startup life and being a business founder and owner is really hard on relationships. They suffer. This is due to stress, time commitments, and personal change. Even your dog will hate you. You are going to be a different person coming out than going in. On the plus side, change is personal growth, and the shared struggle that you will have with your co-founders, particularly, and employees and customers, is that it forges lifelong collaboration and friendships. You will have new friends and new supporters. Hopefully your dog will stick with you and you'll have the same dog. Next five. First, imitation is flattery. Steve Jobs is famous for saying this in another way. Whatever you do can and will be copied, particularly if it's good. Likewise, there's no shame in copying other people. You need to be the best, not the first, not the most clever, not the cheapest, but the best. Now, key issue, what does it mean to be the best? Well, that's a book topic. I can't teach that here. That's up to everyone to discover. But whatever it is not about being first to invent, first to market. You have to be the best. Invention, oh, I'm again ahead. Invention builds on the past. If it's worth doing, if anything is worth doing, with 7 billion years and tens of thousands of years of humanity, it has been tried before. And if it's something that can work, it's been done. So if you find that what you're doing or your product or your company or your anything about it is without peer or predecessor, you're kidding yourself. You are probably doing something pointless if you're right, but you're probably wrong. Because again, if it's worth doing, it's been done. You have to be the best. Study everything. Know your market, know your customers, your competition, tech trends, read, network, and keep up with the news. Be obsessively curious and informed. And then keep the receipts. Hopefully the final signed version of everything, not scraps. Have a bookkeeping system in place, not on day one, on day zero. Before you get started, the first time you have an expense or anything that is financial related, start to keep records. Why? Well, if you run a company, you know this. The day that your investors ask for diligence or you have a lawsuit, you're being audited, you're selling the company, you need a license, you're going through vendor intake at a big company, you are going to be scrambling for things you can't find. So keep everything in order. And here's one of those opposites about invention. Invent your own game. Invent something new. There you go, this game. Hopefully it will not be a dumb AI-generated mismatch of misspelled terms, but this is not a chess championship. You're not going for world's best champion or world's fastest runner. There's only room for one. You cannot beat the best in the world at your home court, so don't try as a startup founder. Those people are the ones who made the game up. It is their game. They enforce the rules. That's their moat. The incumbent players already control production, distribution channels, public perception, and branding. They may have regulatory captures to make what you're trying to do illegal and theirs favored. To displace an incumbent, you have to be 10 times better, serve their customers 10 times better, whether that is something cheaper or more compelling. Again, it is up to you to discover what is best, but you have to be best on your terms and not theirs. The game you invent should be one that they cannot win, and hopefully one they can't even play, and that you force them into it. Put them on your court, not theirs. Okay, we're halfway through or on the way. Third set, seek professional help. It's challenging even with a great team, service providers, and supporters. Without that support, it's nearly impossible. And when you do get those people, set things up right. Hire a strong startup lawyer and or a service like Gust. Obviously, disclaimer, I helped design it and we're all here thanks to Gust, but I do think it's the best for a brand new company that is looking for a program to start the nuts and bolts of a company. Get those right. And it does eventually certainly involve a lawyer and a good accountant. Good employees are priceless. Hopefully you know this. But beyond just hiring someone who's good, realize that no amount of motivation in the world, no compensation, stock, salary, bonuses, incentives you give them, no skills, no reputation and resume will turn an otherwise good employee who's a company man or woman into a great startup employee. They need a startup spirit. Like you, that is a rare breed. Know the labor laws. Once you get them, pay the minimum wage. There is no such thing as a volunteer legally in the US. Unpaid interns, also no. Do not treat employees as contractors. Use the right employment agreements. Get the proprietary information. Hire a benefits provider. Don't try to do HR yourself. So run a clean ship with your staffing and HR. And probably most importantly, there's a right way to raise money. There are industry customs in the startup world for brand new companies, and there are laws and regulations about raising money. So learn and practice doing it right. As a digression, if you're a CEO or if you work with one, what is the role of a CEO? A CEO has three jobs, three essential jobs in any company, from a brand new startup to a public company. First, they set the vision for the company, whether that's internal or as a company grows, it's an external face of the company. They're the face of the outside world. Number two, building and hiring and managing and incentivizing the team, the teamwork, team leader, coach, company culture. Third, the one I'm getting to is raising money. That is not a sideline. That is not something you can have someone else to do. As CEO, you must personally be able to raise money. That will carry through from your very first check to your IPO and beyond. In doing so, the right way to do it, avoid finders and brokers at the early stage. Anyone who's promising to bring you money rather than you finding and securing your own investors, if they are not putting in their own money and time and effort, it is an empty promise. If they really meant to bring you money, they would have. They wouldn't be telling you that they're going to do so, even for free. But certainly if they want compensation for raising money, avoid them. That is not done. And get legal advice on how to do it throughout the process. The fourth set is a little bit of a buzzkill. These are some downers, or maybe they are a couple incentives. One, 90% of succeeding is not failing. It's kind of like the quote about showing up. Success and increased valuation and securing investments, getting things going as a company is as much about systematically eliminating one by one these existential risks I talked about. Most important, if you can, eliminate the risk of running out of money. This is especially true in growth stage companies, but it is true of all companies. Do a little math. Let's say you have 10 possible things that could happen, each of which has a 10% chance of killing the company, and you'll go out of business. Well, if these are uncorrelated, you multiply those out, and that gives you a 2/3 chance of failure, which is too much because this is independent failure. No matter how good your product is, everything else you're doing perfectly. If something happens and everyone quits, or you run out of money, or you do something illegal and you get shut down, that is an unforced error. So try to figure that out. Similarly, that failure, like running out of money, is the symptom. It's not the cause. Companies do not fail because they run out of money. They fail when they run out of money. That is the agent of demise, not the cause. I mentioned some others like lawsuits, but these are not the real reason. It's a little like a 5-year-old who you might have who plays the why game. Why did my company fail? I ran out of money. Why did you run out of money? Well, because we didn't have enough customers. Why didn't you have enough customers? Because we didn't have product market fit, and on and on. Finding the actual source, the lever that you could pull, is the issue. And usually that is a long-term, unaddressed systemic problem, like poor decision-making, lack of information and planning, allowing your culture to deteriorate, lingering tensions and conflicts with your co-founders. By the time you run out of money, it is usually too late. You should have seen it coming. But if you are there, like a lot of us do, because one of these will be inevitable, first you have to stop the bleeding, stop the actual death, but then you have not solved the problem. So take that window you may have before it comes back and tries to kill you again. Next, vesting is not an option, but all options have vesting. Everyone at the company should be on some kind of vesting program. That's typically a 48-month straight line monthly vesting, 1-year cliff for both founders and employees, including yourself. You can adjust these, and if you go through Gust Launch or read into it, there are ways to adjust these. But if you don't know what vesting is, how it works, and what these terms mean, learn them. And the reason is because you have to be planning for the fact that people leave. Founders leave. So in the hundreds of companies I have advised and helped start, I have learned if you see 4 founders in a room who are all getting along and all eager to start their company, at least one of them, probably 2, will not be there in a year. And that is certainly true of your first 10 employees. They will not all be there in a year unless there's a miracle. Plan for their departure up front, not in the heat of a termination, resignation, or medical emergency, or some other issue that makes them leave, because that is a time where there's conflict and people don't agree. Vesting program is number 1, but also plan for other sources of exit. Finally, innovate sparingly. Do not create a Rube Goldberg device out of your company structure. So it's the opposite of innovating. But focus your innovation on the core issues that matter. What differentiates your company? What are you selling? It might be the product. Often it is the technology. It could be a marketing channel, a sales approach. What makes you the best? Focus on innovating that. Do not innovate things like the kind of company you run. So sorry, I am not that excited about DAOs and other things like that. Or flat management structures. Don't reinvent the wheel as far as a company, because again, risk. This creates an uncorrelated source of risk. You may be doing everything else, but maybe the way your company is run on the blockchain just doesn't work. Maybe it's got a 50% chance of elevating you beyond everyone and a 50% chance of failing. Now your 90% chance of failure, or whatever it is a 95% chance of failure. It is an unnecessary risk. Along that front, I skipped one, but avoid dangerous things. Things like shiny objects, things that are too good to be true. Founders, CEOs chase shiny objects. You see something exciting, you want to do it. Just be sure it is not going to have a security risk. The product's not going to fail. It's not going to lead to hacking. It's not illegal. It will not sink your company, because a lot of things that are truly new and innovative and exciting and are too good to be true, shiny objects, have a high failure rate. So be very careful. Develop your risk DAR. Okay, last fine, or a little more fun, even though it doesn't sound so fun. No dead wood. Everyone drawing salary at a startup, or holding shares, or even just showing up, has to be indispensable and at the top of their game. A four-person canoe, four founders, two employees, cannot go anywhere if only two of them are paddling. Another way to think about it is that there are at least 20 job roles or corporate functions that have to be done in any company. Startup companies, no exception. You have obviously product, sales, marketing, support, QA, testing, tech, design, brand, IT, security management, operations, recruiting and hiring, running the HR once you have hired people, finance, raising money, analysis, partnerships, investor relations, legal and accounting, and compliance. There are probably others. That's probably 25 roles I've gone down, and you have four people to do it. So everyone has to be wearing multiple hats and have multiple competencies, either have them or learn them. How many founders do you have to cover that? Two, four? Throw in some early employees. No matter how you cut it, people are doing multiple roles. Having multiple people with redundant roles and capabilities, having your twin to help your startup with you, hopefully not a digital twin, is redundant. That's a waste of a person in the room, much less if the person is not very good, not committed, or not relevant. That is a waste and not optimal. Now, here's the opposite. Make sure everyone at your company can be replaced. Not possible in day one. You know, if you quit, there goes your company. But as your company grows, one of the key issues that reduces risk of failure and increases your valuation in the eyes of investors and basically the practicality of making money is that people can leave and everyone is replaceable because, you know, things happen and people, once they left, are very hard to replace. So in a growth stage company, especially as your company reaches higher valuations, it's all about eliminating these risks. And that one of the main risks is key person departure. This is a transformation from unique multiple roles to some amount of redundancy and backup. That is, you know, it's kind of a shedding. It's a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. Companies go through multiple fundamental transformations as they go from two people on a couch or living room or garage or Zoom to hundreds of people and unicorn status. Next one, no turning back. You cannot go back. David S. Rose, our patron saint of Gust and founder of Gust, is fond of saying that only about 1% of people are the true unicorns who will be a good startup founder. Much of that is good, just a matter of their personality and disposition. On the flip side, once you become one, you have now disqualified yourself from 99% of the jobs out there that the other people hold because you cannot work for a boss without going crazy. So once you go down that path, once you self-identify and start, well, look on the bright side, you're out of everyone's hair. But it is very hard to join and become a regular salaried worker after starting a unicorn. Some people can do it. It's very hard. And respect is earned. You will not have your way with your co-founders, with the company, with the public, with your investors, or anyone else, just because it was your idea. You started the company, you have the CEO title, you have the most shares, you're chairman of the board, you can outvote people. If that's how you get your way, your company will also fail because people will hate you and they will quit. It is no way to run a company. And the corollary is that a group of founders usually makes decisions by consensus. It is these decisions, the persuasion is based on who has respect, credibility, and the best argument, data supported ideally. So have the best argument. And this involves humility and listening, not running things by edict. So final issue, despite all this, I can't teach you. I can't teach you these things. This is my expression for what the heck. And also I can't teach you because the only way to learn is to do it yourself and run your own company. Start by observing people running companies and then run it for yourself because there's a heck of a lot to learn. And because you are the best and a dedicated, capable founder with all these traits, you can do it and you will learn. Well, that is all. With that, I wish everyone a successful journey or continuation if you've already started in your startup life, helping the innovation economy and making your own dent in the universe. I will turn it back to our moderators and I'm here. Ask me anything. Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Gil. As always, very entertaining presentation of what could amount to boring knowledge in the hands of anyone else.
Thank you.
Okay.
And here we
So
are.
folks, we are in the AMA section here, so please use the Q&A in the chat. We also have some pre-submitted questions, so I'm going to get through those first. All right, Gil, first up.
Okay. I
We have
promised I
a
wouldn't do this, but I just have to. Okay. Shoot.
All right,
If
we've
it's a good
got
question, I'll toss the mic. We'll have a mic drop moment.
I love it. We've got a product company that is building towards becoming a product offering by starting with consulting services, um, and wondering whether the revenue that is being booked as from the consulting can be booked to the business. And I think there's interesting questions here, right? One is practical and operational. The other is, do they get credit for that as traction?
Okay, well, first, my non-answer. If you're an engineer, you can make anything, do anything you want, but it is not going to be successful in terms of either managing the company long-term or attracting investors. You can book it, just put it in a different book and segregate it out, because consulting revenues, getting paid to do what other people ask you to do, is a fundamentally different business than building a scalable company. Consulting work is not scalable. And if you're a starting company, you're doing something scalable. But it does pay the bills, and sometimes it's necessary. So formally, tell you can't, don't hide it from investors. That's one of the worst turnoffs. Oh yeah, we started this company, blah blah blah. There's 10 people. Oh yeah, we're all consulting and we're doing this as a sideline. Just be upfront about it. But no, it's not really part of the calculus of your company value. And eventually you will find it is distracting. So a lot of opportunistic money-making opportunities take you off mission. And as you become more and more successful, raise money, get a larger crew, you will find yourself turning down even very lucrative consulting jobs because you need to get things done that are more important. At first, maybe necessary. Next.
Awesome. Thanks, Gil. We have a couple more that follow in this vein. So running a community, I also build a product for communities. So obviously this person is kind of solving their own problem. Their
Way to do
community
it.
fits their ideal customer profile. And now they're contending between charging for membership in the community versus charging for the product. Um, Again, like how to think about that, how to structure that. If you're the person basically, if you're solving your own problem and you run an entity that needs the problem solved, how do you think about that?
Yes, well, certainly the aspect of eating your own, let's not call it dog food, eating your own grape is a very good way to test and make sure it works and have a customer. It doesn't really count as sales, but if you run a company and you're selling products and you're using your own products, very useful. On the technical question of how you should charge for it, I'm not an expert, and even if I were, I don't have the data. It's a database decision. There may be some guides, there may be some wisdom about it, but you probably need to do some A/B or multivariate testing with part of your community and trials, because if you are like Netflix, when they changed their subscription model and 10% of their people left, well, you may find that everyone leaves, the day that you say, I'm sorry, it's going to cost you $10 a month. But try it. But do charge for things. Ultimately, you have to make money, right? And when communities become valuable, whether it's a freemium model or paid subscription, that's a well-worn path. People know how to do it. You advertise only $10 a month, then you click your credit card as well. That's for 12-month subscription, so give me $120. Whatever it is, there are ways of doing it. But I find you'll eventually have to have some kind of subscription revenue, which is great because it's recurring, or selling products. So just try it, see what happens.
Awesome. And last related one, if you are a company that effectively owns or builds multiple products, where is the line that you need to start considering potentially a DBA? So if you're a community that build, or if you
Oh.
are a company that builds products for communities and you also own and monetize a community, do you need a DBA to run and sell that community? How do you manage that?
Well, a DBA isn't really a business structure. It's sort of a name. Naming things, that's kind of a sideline. Now, there's a deeper question though. If you are informally selling things and you haven't incorporated a company and whatever, there's a time when you need to get serious. And that involves a Delaware C Corp. I can't repeat that enough. Delaware C Corp, if it is going to be a high growth startup with multiple employees, multiple founders, investors coming in, and so on. If it's a lifestyle business or brick and mortar, there are many reasons why to incorporate a local LLC. But at some point, it's a real business, run it like one. And then you have to figure out where the circle is. What is part of the business and what is not part of the business? What is yours and what belongs to the business? If you are seeking investment from angels, full-time participation of co-founders, it's all part of the business. Everything that is necessary for the business or that the business makes money from should be something that was within that circle I drew, because that's what they're investing in. If they're investing in the sandbox, the business has to own the sandbox, not something that you say, I'm taking it home. So again, it's a matter of when it gets real, consider it and formally create a company. DBA is just a technicality about adopting a name.
Awesome, thanks. And I think it's worth noting too when you draw the line of the sandbox, you're drawing a line that is useful for everybody who's investing in the company, whether that be time or money. Anybody who is putting forth effort to build this shared enterprise needs it to be in a structure that allows for a shared enterprise to be built, and that includes you. All right. Next up, we have somebody starting a chocolate bar company.
Oh, I love it. I have actually represented a chocolate factory. So
This is
that's
amazing.
one of
Perfect.
my favorite things to do.
So they've got
They
500
succeeded. They had a good
accounts.
exit. Yeah.
They
Hershey's.
aspire to grow 10x to 5,000, and they are thinking about that growth and how they might make a CPG chocolate bar company presentable to potential investors.
Okay, I'm not sure 5,000 watts, but I don't know what
Yes,
that is relative.
5,000 accounts. I'm not sure.
Okay,
This could be,
5,000
if
chocolate
you're in
bars.
the chat, clarify for us
Well,
if
it
you're
doesn't
talking about
really matter
customers,
because
distributors, etc.
there are a lot of niches. Although calling food service a niche, it's bigger than the entire tech startup world. The U.S. food economy is multi-trillion dollars, or at least it's over $1 trillion if you include all corners of it. And that has its own world of products, distribution, investors, founders. I have found that the food community, whether it's manufacturing products, distribution, sales, retail, uh, institutional service, and chocolate bars, they're very collaborative and friendly. So if you go up to John Scharfenberger, who's the person I mentioned, I think we actually had another one, Cho, who's a friend of the firm. They're happy to share their life knowledge with you and how they did it. But there is a unique community of people who will invest in it. People who are going to be investing in self-driving cars and AI probably will not be investing in chocolate bars unless they get personally excited and they love the chocolate, which is kind of how some of the high profile food things run. Um, and there are going to be metrics about how to do that. Long way of saying I'm not an expert in exactly how to do that with chocolate. Starting any kind of business, it's all about distribution, and of course production, making good product, getting loyalty. But how do you get on the shelves? How do you get to people? And once you do it, once you have reliable channels and you find a way to expand your channels, whether that's getting into Whole Foods in Seattle, and then you do so well, odds are very tough at Whole Foods, but you do so well that now they introduce you to their regional distributor, and then you go national, and then you get into Safeway, and then you go online, um, and then they carry you at whatever, you go down market to Walmart. It's about credibility of distribution. How to do that, I think you need to study.
Yeah, I think
Next.
important to note here, and you touched on it, is finding investors that specialize in what you are presenting them is probably one of the most important aspects of making your startup
Yes.
presentable to investors.
Find people who have started a chocolate company or who have invested in chocolate companies before, and then go adjacent to that, and then two steps adjacent. Who's invested in restaurants? Who's invested in selling retail things that appear in grocery stores or department stores? Those are the people who have a taste for it. And because a lot of investors, both individual angels and also funds, they operate on a thesis. They don't just toss money every direction there's exciting company. They have a focus of what they want to invest in and what they know. So you'll find that people who've invested before in a similar kind of business proposition are your best potential investors.
Awesome. Thank you, Gil. Okay. Ooh, interesting high level broad one. Are investors
Okay.
afraid of the cannabis industry?
Yes.
Maybe some overlap.
Even though they all smoke cannabis. Um, but there too, you have some really gonzo people who would love to invest in cannabis and have made a lot of money. Not just, until it became more or less legal in many places, there was just a fear. And you actually find a lot of tech company and tech people, despite being disruptive or changing the world or not going down any pathway, you'll find that on things like vices, pornography, whatever, I'm sorry, adult entertainment, they're extra careful. So you can't do on Facebook what you can do almost anywhere else in terms of content. I'm sure if you start posting cannabis content to most social media or ads, they will turn you down. Banks will turn you down. There's a special breed of banks. So it is tough. I can't say. But the other thing that's going on is this whole retail legalized cannabis thing is a big bust for a lot of the industry. Now there's money to be made when things turn bad by fixing them or doing it in a way that doesn't turn bad. But a lot of people have pretty bad experiences, bad taste in your mouth, if you'll excuse that, from the failures of a lot of these retail cannabis companies. It is tough, and the multiples are not the same. But if that is your opportunity and that's what you're doing, that's what you're going to do, you live with that and you figure it out.
And I think it overlaps with what we just talked about too. Like there are investors who specialize in cannabis
Oh,
because
absolutely.
there are investors
Tons.
who lead the charge into newly developing industries, because that's who investors are. They need to find alpha somewhere, and newly developing and changing regulation is one place they look. But largely, investors in aggregate do not all move together because that would make the industry fall over. Um, well, I guess in some cases they do move together in specialized packs, but in total and in aggregate, they don't. So always look for the people who are active in the space, and who are doing it. All right, next one. Are term sheets take it or leave it, or are they expected to be negotiated? And especially if you are working with a top tier VC and you are getting what you believe to be unfair terms, is the expectation that there is some room for pushback there? Or is it kind of a sign that you and the VC are not going to be compatible?
All of the above. They are negotiable and they are negotiated. And you may find that the reality is you just can't come to terms. And you may have to walk away or they may want to walk away. It may be a game. Uh, but yes, there is back and forth on term sheets with your lead investor. Now, once the terms are set, everyone else has to fall in line pretty much. Now, there are certain investors, even venture capital funds, who are famous for saying, okay, that's what you agreed with them, give us a special deal. We always get a special deal. And then you tell them, well, I can't give it to you unless I give it to them because everyone's going to know, and then they want something. But in general, you negotiate the deal with your lead VC, and it is a negotiated deal. If you are finding that they get turned off, that you have the temerity to even stand up for yourself, you're a bad founder. They shouldn't be investing in you anyway. And it is their loss if they invest in people who are pushovers. Now, there's a big difference between being desperate and eating the money. And maybe you both look at each other in the eye and you say, I know these terms suck, but I'm going to take it. You may have to, and they may be taking advantage of that. If you have multiple competing offers, then you're in a great position and you can, to some extent, negotiate them. It's not just the valuation, there are also some terms. Get some perspective from co-founders, lawyers, advisors. But don't be a pushover. They're going to respect when you stand up for yourself, as long as you do it with class. I said there's a way to raise money. Raising some dumb issue like a guarantee that I will never be fired, that sets you off as a headstrong newbie and someone difficult to work with, perhaps. So within the right way, if you have the right leverage, you certainly can negotiate terms, even with major VCs. And if they say, look, we never negotiate our term sheet, it's take it or leave it, you say, well, I never take it. So, and maybe you're making the right decision. One thing to keep in mind, the total amount of equity you're giving up, probably at the pre-seed or seed stage, is not that high. If it is, you should just walk away, period. But you're not giving away more than 5–10% of your company at pre-seed. So if the fact that they're going to get 13, how much difference does that really make to you? A lot of it is just finding the right people, having money, going on along on a good cadence. Later stage, then it becomes a little more important. But negotiating too good of a deal, flip that, and the VC or investors shouldn't be pushovers either. Okay, so
Yeah, I
yes,
think
they are
David
negotiable.
is always famous
By the
for
way, don't
saying.
blame me if they walk away and you have to. But do give me credit for at least a fraction of the millions of dollars of extra equity you will keep.
Yeah, everybody is supposed to walk away from a good negotiation a little bit bummed about what happened, right? And I think definitely important to remember that you can negotiate only with the leverage that you have. So certainly keep that in mind. And if you're looking for information about what terms are typically negotiated, Gust publishes a Series Seed term sheet that is annotated. The NVCA publishes a model preferred share term sheet that is also annotated, so you can kind of understand what those are. And there are a couple other resources out there that you can consult.
Everything is kind of within brackets and norms. So if you can find the resources to figure out what the range of valuations is for a similar company, the negotiation should be where you are in that range. If their offer is somewhere out of the range on the minus side, you can have some data and support it. Why is this happening? The same also goes with terms. There are terms that are market and there are terms that are antiquated or never were market in the first place. So if you can find a survey, Carta puts out one of those. It's a bit of a Gust peer and competitor. Gust has plenty of knowledge on this front, and it's all over the web. What percentage of deals have this particular term? And if you can show them, hey, look, only 5% of the deals have this term, you're asking for this, if you want that, give me something else. That kind of ammunition is the most helpful rather than, an appeal to, oh, it's unfair, I'm not comfortable with this. If you can back it up why you're asking for something different, no one's going to fault you for, doing the right sensible thing.
Yeah, and I think, with tools like Mission Control, we can help you navigate some of this stuff at Gust. But also, if you are raising multiple $1 million from a tier one VC, then it is well worth the cost of a good startup lawyer. And if you are in negotiations with a tier one VC, you will likely be able to negotiate with them for some deferred billing. So that is a great time when a lawyer who has structured deals with startups and VCs is a great value add. And make sure you don't use the VC's lawyer. Very important.
Yeah, there's a little funny configuration. Sometimes you punt it to the lawyers, let's have our lawyers talk it over. And then if there's a term that just makes them blow up and steaming man, you blame the lawyers. And lawyers are, a good lawyer will say, taking the blame is part of my job. So there's this four-way negotiation, founder to VC, lawyer to lawyer, particularly as it gets a little bit more advanced in the negotiation process. That can be very helpful.
And yeah, still in your best interest to understand the baseline terms and kind of where things lie. But you can definitely tap in your lawyer for the hard negotiation stuff. Okay, how do you think about assigning C-level roles like CEO, CTO, and CPO in an early stage startup, especially when maybe it's the first time these founders are starting a business together?
Well, it's better than calling it, chief instigator or whatever they used to use in the early 2000s to be cool. Um, Titles are titles. Some people place a value in them. These may change. They're not perfect. Someone has to have the leader role, and that is naturally a CEO. So that is actually a substantive issue, not just a title. The convention is that a company has a CEO. If you go out in the world and say, well, there's no CEO, there's a president, it's a little non-standard. Back to my slide about reinventing the wheel. Most of what they call a CTO in a brand new startup is not really a CTO. It's a chief technologist or a lead developer or the best engineer we could find. An actual CTO role is a management position. You are building the hotel, the bed and breakfast, and it is the guests. It is your team that is collectively working on it. Um, but even so, most companies are expected to have a technical lead, and it's fine to call them CTO. I don't think there's any harm in it, but I think a group of founders needs to get together and kind of set expectations. I think beyond the titles, there's a more substantive question. First of all, I said it's not part-time, so the expectation is you're going all in. And, when you meet and you're going to go all in with someone, how's it going to work? How are you going to make decisions? What's your planning? Who's going to be responsible for what? It's good to work through these things. And the roles naturally follow from that. And the convention is, all the founders will have a C level or something like that. They're part of the C-suite. No reason not to do it. They're just titles, but, that's the business norm.
Yeah, and I think important to distinguish too the difference between titles and actual governance roles in the company. A company has to have some officers appointed. Not everybody with the title that includes officer is an officer of the company from a governance standpoint. So there's some
Yes.
interesting differences there.
We can go down a linguistic rabbit hole, but yes, there are what they call statutory officers. Every Delaware corporation needs a president, a secretary, and a treasurer. That can all be you. It can all be someone else. It doesn't have to even be a founder. Um, but you need to set those formal legal roles, and that is all buried in the paperwork. And um, I was going to say no one cares, but this is what we do at Gust Launch. We take care of those things so you don't have to think about it. But yes, there is a president, secretary, and treasurer. Part of the rabbit hole is that Delaware happens to call the president a CEO. So you have the statutory CEO, but usually that's the company leader who takes that statutory position as well.
Okay. With regards to the avoid finders and brokers advice, can you talk a little bit about navigating fundraising properly when it comes to securities compliance, specifically
Okay.
potentially filing Form D, and how to stay the course with regards to the SEC?
Whoa, that's like a law school class. But yeah, and I can tell you not to do it. I can't stop you from doing it. But we lawyers make a lot of money from people who have done it. So because there's some potential serious pitfalls in raising money the wrong way. And most of all, it doesn't work. You won't raise money that way with the brokers typically. Um, in early stages. Once you get to Series B, you often hire a broker or a private equity firm to help you with your fundraising. But in a brand new startup, no. Um, some of the basic rules are deal only with accredited investors. When you're talking to people asking, if they're going to invest, ask if they're an accredited investor. If they don't know yet, well, that's okay. If it's your uncle or aunt, you can explain it to them. But if they don't know, then they're probably not really in the game. Um, and a Form D is what they call a safe harbor. So first of all, don't advertise on the web. Don't tell everyone, hey, everyone, I'm raising money, come talk to me. There are rules you can say you're raising money, but you can't solicit people publicly outside of an exemption for how you do that. So a Form D is a safe harbor. If you do everything the right way and file a Form D in good faith, on time and so on, then it's presumed that you have raised money the right way. And, chances are the SEC, or heaven forbid, the FBI, and your investors wanting their money back cannot say that you broke the securities laws and your investment should be undone and you have all these penalties. So definitely ask your startup lawyer about how to do it. But the basic rule is, don't advertise widely. Don't make claims or promises of future gains. and pre-clear anyone you're seriously pitching to make sure they are accredited. Some of this can be done on crowdfunding programs. There's different kinds of crowdfunding. I'm not particularly fond um, of the unaccredited, public solicitation platforms. But there are other platforms that will help you dealing with investors and that can help with some of this compliance stuff. But get some help doing it and figure out what some of the more specific rules are around how to do it. I hope that's helpful.
Awesome. We've got about 6 minutes left. So lightning round time, I suppose.
Okay.
We'll try to get through as many of these as possible. In the meantime, if you are interested in doing this on a weekly basis and diving into depth into these topics, I will have Ryan Nash post a link to Mission Control in the chat again. It's 99 bucks a month. You can opt out anytime, even if you just pay us for 1 month. And our mandate is to save you billable hours and help you navigate this stuff. All right, next up.
And
When
somehow
is
we
it?
keep bringing Gil in week over
I
week
show
because
up.
he does.
Hold a panel and invite me. I love to show up and talk about these things. But I do definitely come to Mission Control
I
and
think we
work
all
with
do.
the Gust people as a recurring guest star at some of their Q&A sessions.
And we appreciate it. Okay, next up, first in the lightning round. When is a good time to get a lawyer and an accountant post-launch when starting to engage with customers? Pre-launch?
Well, ideally it would be, pre-launch and when you're incorporating. Uh, if you can afford it or interest a good startup lawyer in deferring billing. The time I would start one, if you incorporate through a good service that is really tailored to startups like Gust Launch, some people can defer actually paying for a lawyer. You might engage one or start talking with them. Uh, don't use LegalZoom, please. By then you're going to definitely need to hire a lawyer to fix what you broke. I mean, it's perfectly fine service, but it is meant for flower shops and grocery stores and it's a one size fits all for everyone. It's not meant for startup companies specifically. Um, Certainly when you are dividing equity among founders, when you're hiring your first employee, setting up a stock plan, all of these things can be done through a service, through Gust Launch, but it's good to have a lawyer there advising you. And frankly, using Gust Launch should cut your legal bills because the lawyer doesn't have to do all that tedious, back office work. Earlier the better. Accountant, let me get this straight. You should be doing a bookkeeping from day one or day zero, really. Accountant is a specialized position who takes it all, oversees it, does the taxes. It'd be nice to have that on day one, but on day one, really you need a bookkeeping service and someone competent at bookkeeping, whether it's a consultant or, one of your employees who has done bookkeeping before, or you learning how to enter stuff into QuickBooks or whatever someone is using. That function has to be there from day zero. Finding the accountant, certainly by the first tax return you file, within your first year, you'll be trying to find a good, right-sized accounting firm.
And quick note on that, when we say find a lawyer, we mean find a lawyer who works with startups and has worked with startups with a demonstrated track record in startups because they are a specialized beast.
Yes. Your family lawyer, if you have a family lawyer, probably doesn't know how to do startups. And likewise, a big firm, big company lawyer who works for Microsoft, may not know either, although they may think they do. Lawyers are very headstrong about these things. But yes, work with experienced startup lawyers.
All right, easy softball. Where did you get the awesome shirt?
Oh, well, this is Hawaii. Unfortunately, I think this is probably a Ralph Lauren polo shirt. They actually make a lot of good Hawaiian shirts. I'm a fan of Ren Spooner, but I'm in Hawaii, so there are a lot of Hawaiian shirts. This is accepted business attire here and some parts of the North San Francisco Bay. When you find a crowd of middle-aged people going to a wine tasting and they're venture capitalists, 50-50 chance they'll be wearing Hawaiian shirts. And you can find those throughout the Bay Area as well.
Okay.
Happy to see anything.
Coming in as an engineer, how do you get the baseline information? What is vesting? How do you fundraise? Where to find funds, etc., so that you can engage with mentors effectively?
Okay, that's a terrible question. I just had to say that. I hate when people stall by saying that's a great question. It's one of my pet peeves. And another thing I like to say is that as an engineer, for some reason, you can do complex things with all kinds of science and mathematics, and you put a dollar sign in front of it, a simple piece of arithmetic, and engineers just get totally confused because there's money involved. It is, all this stuff is actually pretty simple. Um, and if you just treat it as as a technical math problem, questions, and by the way, I forgot this question as to the specifics. I was getting too excited. But if it's a question of vesting and ownership and fundraising and rates of return and all these metrics, um, take the dollar sign off it and just do this very simple math. Some of it's a little recursive, but I hope you can handle those calculations too, or simulate it in a spreadsheet.
And I mean, shameless plug again. This is literally why we built Mission Control. Come find us. Okay.
Yes, actually, engineers are the greatest people to work with because they actually know how to do something and know what they're doing. So that path from engineer to founder, unfortunately, it is you can't go back. So like me, I am an ex-engineer. Those brain cells all went away as soon as I did start putting the dollar sign and saw what we used to call the dark side. It is a bit of an incompatible mindset, but the background of engineering and methodical problem solving and working with systems and levels of understanding is all extremely helpful in figuring out companies and markets and products and so on.
Awesome. All right, we are at time. I can stay for a few longer if you can, Gil.
Okay.
Otherwise, I will end it with one question. Everybody, thank you for joining us. We will follow up with recordings.
Sure thing.
Gil has turned this into a PDF, so if you have to leave now, don't sweat it. We will send it out so you can continue to watch as Gil answers questions until.
Yeah, let me know if you agree. If you can commiserate, I love to hear founder stories. Okay, final question.
All right. We can go as long as your game, Gil. But first, I think there's a couple interesting ones. What stands out to you in a pitch? And can you share any example of a memorable pitch you got as a VC and why it stood out?
Okay, first one is easy. If you're actually on stage in front of me pitching, you have 8 seconds to grab my attention. If it is a pitch deck, you have about 2 seconds. And the first thing I will do is just filter, is this a load of nonsense? I was going to curse. And also, is it something I do? So if you say, look, we have invented this medical device that's going to cure cancer, great, I love that, but that's not me. So first thing is just to set the expectation. So I personally don't like the pitches that begin with, the personal story. I think it's important to communicate somewhere in the pitch why you're doing it, why it's the one thing you want to do in your life, and why you're the one person in the world who can do it and should be doing it. But the story that says, when I had my first dog, he was a nightmare for potty training. It's like, okay, you've wasted my 8 seconds. I know that. I want to know, we are a direct-to-consumer company that is already raised $1 million and is looking for its next $1 million to sell, dog potty training, distribute to the public. Then I've framed it. And then there's got to be something that catches, like, why? Why is this company extraordinary? So lead with something that just grabs attention. And then once the attention's there, then there's a series, and this is pitch deck class, not Ask Me Anything class, but in what has to be done. My goodness, what is one? I can't. My memory doesn't work that way. I used to have what they call video store, decision paralysis. When you go, this mic fell down. When you go to an old video store or Blockbuster and you see 10,000 videos and you think, I can't think of a movie I want to watch. I have that kind of organizational problem. I've seen so many pitches. I have a fun anti-pitch. It's my Reid Hoffman story. He told me he's starting a company that's basically going to be Friendster for Business, and that's like Friendster for Business. That is dog food for cats. Friendster is all about posting memes or whatever they did in 2004 or 2002 when it started, and it is not business. And I thought, well, this Reid Hoffman guy is pretty smart, so I'll play along. But I would not have invested. And actually, I didn't. I chose not to invest. I could have invested in pre-formation LinkedIn, and I did not. So don't ask me what's the best pitch. I'm kind of an anti-pitch deck guy, but something that aligns and catches attention. Okay, that was not lightning response, but
No, that's okay. Well,
okay.
let me know whenever you have to go, and we will cut this.
Okay. I
next
can do a few more minutes. We should sign off for the recording for the network broadcast and so on. And now it's going to be a little more informal.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Next up, how do you feel about safes?
Oh yeah, wonderful. I don't use safes. I trust the hotel staff. Okay, that was a bad one. I love safes, both as an investor and a founder. And especially as a lawyer, they are the most clever thing. It's like this miracle universal document that you can sign, and it doesn't break things. It plays nice with other things. Don't try this without a lawyer, but what they call stacked financing. We've already raised some money this way, we have this thing, and we're going to sign a safe. Normally the advice, and still the advice, is don't stack different kinds of financing in the same stack. Just get them closed, get it done, move to a new round. But safes are brilliant. There's a lot of talk of people who don't like safes, and I think most of it is misguided. In fact, if you find me on LinkedIn, I've been posting about this. So first of all, don't worry about the deal. You're an engineer, or you should be one. I'm an engineer. We can tweak the financial terms to achieve whatever curve of outcomes we want, whether it's a safe, a price round, a convertible note, what have you. We can set the outcome versus payback to investors, and even some of the conditions. If the safe doesn't have this condition, like it doesn't say, hey, what happens if we sell the company before the safe converts? We'll guarantee you twice your money back. Well, you can put that in what's called a side letter. Sign the exact same safe, don't modify it with everyone, and write everything that's going to be different in a side letter. People complain that by the time you add a side letter to turn a safe into something else, why not use something else? And I'll tell you why not. Because safes work with everything. They're 100% standardized. They don't even necessarily need a lawyer to understand. They are quick and fast at raising money. So anything under $2 million, $4 million raise, I like safes. I have not seen as a lawyer, well, that's not correct. I have not been involved as a lawyer in any safe investment or convertible note investment that went bad, that actually generated a much worse financial outcome for anyone than the round. You invest $2 million at a $10 million valuation, $10 million cap, whatever. Company goes, usually it fails, sometimes it succeeds. At the end of the day, you have some money or stock worth money. That outcome is the same regardless of what instrument you use. And the thinking about all the fine print, like, oh, on this one, you actually promised me that everything you said in your financial documents was accurate to the best of your knowledge, and the safe doesn't promise that. Well, who cares? If you promised something that isn't true, your company's going to fail, or you committed fraud and your investors will hate you. It doesn't matter what you use. There are cases where it gets into a lawsuit, or where a subsequent investor, it's usually not the company that screws the investors, it's usually a greedy subsequent investor who says, I don't care about those angel investors. We're a top tier venture capital firm, and we're going to take all this, and those people can suck it up. There are cases where you sometimes see it, and the lawyers jumping in where the problems happen, in the exceptional events, may see more than their share. But I don't believe. So my thesis of some of the writings on LinkedIn is it's that whole sucker thing about terms. If you're an investor, and some investors say this, I would never invest in a safe. They're unsafe. They don't give us rights. They are just greedy founders who just want to raise money without standing behind their company. If that is the standard, given that something like 86% of all pre-seed and before money and funding round is raised on safes, you're filtering out 85% of your deals, and you're filtering out the founders who stand up for themselves, the ones who actually, will treat you that way and treat their competitors that way and say, I'm not just going to bow down and do something that is worse for the company just because I have to. So long story. There are valid technical reasons why people don't like safes. A serious repeat investor will have their standard. So if you go to pre-seed venture capital firm or a well-placed lead angel investor, and they say, let's do a convertible note, not a safe. Or if they say, priced round, I don't think anything under $2 million buys you a priced round because of all the delays and structure and ongoing costs of the increased complexity. But if it's even as low as $1 million, $2 million, and you're dealing with the investor, yeah, you can accept it. As an investor, I do think it is misguided, especially as an angel investor, because all that fine print you get in all those documents is stuff that a venture capitalist and their lawyers can use. It is not something, certainly not as a passive angel investor who invests and prays and hopes, helps the company for now, but once the company gets to be 100 people and is, on Bloomberg every day, thanks for the ride. I'll see you when we go public. That angel investor doesn't get anything extra by having other forms other than a safe. Okay, long rant, but
Super
I
thorough.
am and will be writing on this.
Notably, Gust executive chairman and founder David S. Rose is one of the investors that say, I don't invest on a safe. We'll be talking a bit more about this, hopefully, in the near future. We're going to bring
Yeah, well,
in
he turned down my
Gil
company
and
that became a
others.
unicorn, but ended up owning
Well,
stock in
there
it
you go.
anyway. So one of us will convince the other. It is, it's a legitimate position. I just happen not to agree with it, and I don't act on that. Now, there is a new form of convertible note, which is a middle ground, and actually I would place it, once we have a good convertible note that is totally standardized and well written. All the old convertible notes out there are really badly constructed legal documents and structures. But once we have a good industrial grade one, there is an organization called the Angel Capital Association that has just published a very good one that I like and will also be writing about. That, I think, is a good use that will say between $1 million raised and about 4 million. There's where we use an industrial strength convertible note. Anything small or under, a safe, or even if it's friends and families, just a loan. And 4 million and up, institutional investors, yeah, sooner or later you are going to be doing full priced equity rounds. But we can push that off to your, large seed or Series A round.
Yeah, we should be talking more about that with the drafting committee and Gil in a webinar
Yes, that may be the next
sometime in the
session.
very near future. Also, check out Gil's writing. He's writing a ton on LinkedIn. And if you subscribe to the Gust Weekly newsletter, we actually just wrote about some of this stuff yesterday in a post entitled Speed versus Safety. Okay, heard on another call today that seed expectation is 20% of equity. Is that what you are seeing in the market as well?
I would have to see what's the latest, and this varies quarter by quarter. There has been some grade inflation. So what they call, it's funny, it's cheap to start a company. It used to be you'd have to get a server closet, get some high pipes to your room, get all your computer stuff, design your own development environment and deployment environment. So to actually get to the point of being an online company that could sell stuff to the public, you couldn't do that until you raised $2 or $3 million Series A. Now you can do that, with a few $100s a month of subscriptions, to things like GitHub and Dropbox and whatever, credit cards and whatever it is. It's very cheap to start a company, and Gust is driving down the organizational legal costs as well. Yet we hear that the seed rounds are now as big as the A rounds used to be, millions of dollars. So what we call a seed round, may be an institutional investor, a venture capital fund side fund, or a micro VC. And that may be 20% if it's a whole lot of money. If you're raising $2 million, $10 million post, $8 million pre is a pretty healthy, to get to being worth an $8 million valuation, you better have some traction in sales, monthly recurring revenue, a team, you'd be well set up. And I can see, I don't think, unless you're an AI company or something that's knocking it out of the ballpark, you're not going to get a $20 million valuation. So if you're going to raise $2 million at the seed level, $10 million post valuation sounds about right. And that's 20% of post. So, it makes sense. But a lot of it is just the terminology of what you call a funding round and what the configurations are. The valuations have just gone way down since before what we call the Great Reset. The first half of the pandemic, everyone's investing and making money on the stock market online. Then we had something that wasn't quite a recession that hit the private economy first. And the valuation of pretty much every private company, especially later stage ones, went down by 50% or more. So either you're going to raise half as much money or give up twice as much equity for the same, boost of money. Fair enough, but just, don't do too many rounds if you can help it, because if you do, 20% at seed, 20% at pre-seed, 20%, 25% at Series A, 15% at Series B, and you get all the way to Series K, you and your co-founders and team and early investors are going to own 2% or 5% of the company, and you're going to either have to recapitalize or just not, that happens, but you should watch over on the long term, you should watch the dilution.
I think Ryan posted a little bit of extra in the chat. Generally very high level, 10 to 20% in each round is a ballpark, but keep an eye out. Carta publishes monthly and quarterly data on this these days. And there are other sources to kind of stay abreast of what the current median is.
Yes, trust Ryan's numbers, not mine, if you haven't figured it out. My use of numbers is rather impressionistic. I try to preface them with saying I just made it up. And I don't study all these charts as much as I refer to data. I just know the data is out there. And if you're serious about doing it and not just talking about it, the information is there. Library science and how to deal with information, especially with the help of generative AI, is one of the key aspects of studying and learning what it takes to start a company. So look at the numbers.
All right, I've got two more for you, and then we will let you go. Appreciate your extra time. First is we've got somebody who's struggling with the expectation that their CTO, who has a highly paid full-time job now, will quit later. Any thoughts about how to think about that and how to broach that conversation?
Well, it depends. Oh, yeah. Yeah, engineers don't always listen to common wisdom or examples or norms. The absolute norm is that the founders have to be full-time. Now, at the very beginning of my presentation, I said that most people are both incapable for financial reasons and also personal, disposition reasons. Being part of the 99% of people who do not start their own company is perfectly respectable. It's kind of funny to have to say this, but there are wonderful, productive, incredible genius engineers and mathematicians and scientists and CTOs who just are not right for the startup environment. Expecting that you will not devote your full-time effort to launching the company until you can be paid a six-figure salary is just not the way startups work. I'm sorry, it just can't work unless there's a miracle of some kind. For a lot of reasons, financially, it doesn't work. You need a CTO not only who's there, but also one who's not just there for the money, and someone who is paid when they join is not a co-founder. They're not taking that risk. They're not really in the room. So, I don't know if you can. I mean, you should have that conversation, but I don't know if that conversation can always be successful. Some people just aren't right. Wonderful engineers, but just may not be right for a startup. But the norm, if the engineer will listen to norms and if they can afford it, is that until the company has money, you don't pay the founders. Founders typically start without pay. As soon as you raise a little money, it is okay, but that pay is going to be low. In most of the US, 5, 6,000 a month. Once you've raised a few $100,000, your investors will understand that, but that's not going to match an engineer's salary. In fact, it never will, until you're maybe at your Series B or C and you have hundreds of people working for the company. Joining a startup almost always involves a cut in base pay and any bonuses and incentive pay. And the compensation is, for the engineers who want to be building something new and leading rather than under the mentorship and guidance of a great engineering organization, that is a reward in itself, as is, knowing that they started it, and, hopefully the equity, which for the companies that do succeed will vastly exceed anything that, one of the FANG group or a big engineering company will pay them. But they have to just be willing to and want to take that risk. Okay.
Well, I think just to briefly address,
we're all
like,
engineers here, so
yeah.
if anyone has any, we all did it.
Well, I think, in terms of your expectation as the founder looking at your CTO, like your expectation is based on the fact that you think that you're building something amazing. And the more you work together to de-risk it and actually build something amazing, that expectation of somebody who's capable of being your CTO coming on full time should become self-evident. So if they are capable and you can work together and you can cultivate a shared excitement about this thing, if they're willing and capable to do it, they'll do it.
Yes.
If you don't expect that people will come and follow you on this wild journey, then you may have a question for yourself about how all in you are on this.
That may go back to my respect slide. You have to inspire people. And if they can be inspired to believe like you in this impossible dream, and you want to work together and do it with them, then they are all in like you. There's almost nothing worse than a doubting engineer, like Scotty from the original series, Star Trek, who says, "Oh, I can't be done. Oh, you're asking me." A skeptical engineer who doesn't believe it but performs is not a startup person. They should work for Starfleet. So, as personally, you have to convince them, and they have to be part of the madness of the believing in the impossible.
Love it. Okay, last one, and this will be kind of fun.
Okay.
This is from Paul Graham, not the Paul Graham, I imagine.
We can pretend.
Coming here for
when we
advice.
think
Every
about
Paul Graham is special.
that initial 8 seconds to catch your interest in a pitch,
Yes.
how does carbon negative desalinated water for water-starved countries without brine waste catch you?
Can you repeat that?
Right?
Tells
I
you
heard
everything you need to
carbon
know.
desalination
And there
countries.
we go, right? Carbon negative desalinated water for water-starved countries without brine waste.
Coming up with a good tagline, I like it because it says exactly what it is. And my brain just doesn't have enough, like registers available to like digest that all at the same time. But I'm sure I could figure that out. I have been in the water business, and I know about desalination and carbon negativity, if you call it that. But that is what you do, which is great. But why? What is the company really doing? So this exercise in creating a pitch, a lot of accelerators will spend the first week on this seemingly ridiculous exercise of figuring out your tagline, and everything flows from there. It's almost like coming up with a slogan or a brand. It's deceptively hard. Easy, it looks easy, but it is really hard to communicate in quickly what it is you do and why anyone should care. So maybe what it is we bring safe water to developing countries in a way that no one's done before, that no one else has been able to do. How do we do it? Then you got my interest if I'm interested in that thing. What I'm interested in is carbon neutral. then, I mean, I hate the ones that say we saved the environment by X. I don't think that's a particularly compelling one because it's so cliche or so common. But I think you need to go through that exercise. Sounds worthwhile. And then what it does, you caught my interest, and now I have questions. So leaving the question, making me wonder, at least I'm interested. So if you say, we desalinize water in a way that does not increase carbon waste and it uses virtually no power, but we've actually done it and we want your money to expand this to another 10 countries. I'm going to be skeptical. It's like, I don't think you can do that. But you said you could. Tell me how. At the point that I am doubting and questioning, that I don't say, this person's a kook or incapable or this is just not a business. If you caught me enough, then you can tell me how. Then you can fill in all those details. So I would just refine, put that line somewhere as what we do. Although that is what the technology does. What does your company do? Are you using off-the-shelf ones? Are you a distributor? Are you a seller? Are you a consultant? Are you doing the control system? So even there's an aspect of what is the company? What am I investing in? But it's a good statement of the field of technology.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that 8-second tagline may depend on your audience, but if your audience is investors rather than technologists in, the water desalinization field, then you may want a tagline that speaks more to what the business does, who cares from a customer perspective, and what is the actual innovation from a customer perspective rather than the technical implementation of how it's done, even expressed in a short form.
I did think of a good one. This was not a business pitch. This was an intro to a talk. This guy comes up on stage. It was at a seminar, and this nerdy guy, I didn't even, he seemed like he didn't fit in. And then he gets up behind the podium and he says, "You may work for a boss. My boss is a yellow creature that shoots fire out of his ass." He was one of the founders and principals of the Pokemon company, of Pokemon fame. I mean, he had me, right? So it's like, what do you mean? You don't work for anyone who's shooting fire out of his butt. So I know that's a little weird, and I may not suggest that in a pitch, but something that just makes them interested to hear the next 8 seconds. The tagline is not 8 seconds long, by the way. The tagline is probably under a second to recite that, and then you've got to put a few other things in. Okay.
All right. Well, I think that is a thunderous way to end the webinar. Gil, thank you so much. It was one of
my favorite speeches ever. Plus, it was just so exciting to hear what Pokemon is up to all over the world. So a lot that goes on in Poke Universe that you wouldn't even think happens, when you're actually running a global gaming platform with people all over the world in different languages and intellectual property and creatures running around shooting each other with magical beams. Okay.
And notably, all of our development environments are named after Pokemon.
Oh, okay. Not Smurfs and not Greek philosophers or Star Trek incidents.
Don't leak our secrets.
Now we can
I don't think that
here,
counts
right?
as a trade secret.
Okay.
But yes, Gil, thank you so much for being here. Everybody who stuck around late, thank you for being here. We will attempt to get the recording out within 24 hours. Please keep on the lookout for more Gust events and tidbits via email. And if you're interested in navigating this stuff on a regular basis, come check out Mission Control or incorporate with Gust Launch.
Okay, thanks everyone.
We'll see y'all soon.
Thank you, Gil. See everybody.
Goodbye.